This final video that I'm going to be making about my experiences with therapy with Brandy at Turning Point in Grass Valley, California. She asked me a question. She wanted to know how I can separate myself from my illness, to separate the fact from the fantasy. So I spent an evening writing a response to that, and I have it right here, so I will read it for you. Separating myself from my illness, the fact from the fantasy. Who am I? It is one of the most fundamental questions a person can ask himself. Of all the questions a person can ask, the most basic are the who, what, why, and how questions. Who am I? What is the nature of reality? What created me and the universe around me? Why am I here? What is my purpose? And finally, how did this all come to be? What were the universal processes that led to my existence? If a person spends an ample amount of brain power addressing these questions, they can usually find some pretty rewarding, although often bewildering answers. These questions I have been asking myself ever since I remember becoming self-aware. I just knew somehow that it all had to do with God in some way. Even though God was an idea that I couldn't see, taste, touch, feel, or hear, I knew that He was behind the whole caboodle of creation, and the more I could understand about Him, the more I could understand about creation and hence myself. I think I had an obsessive interest in God, to be honest. Even though on the outside I seemed like every other little kid, I think I was obsessed and fascinated with God in my mind. I wanted to know if He was real. Everything about the universe told me there had to be a God, but I still wanted to know for sure. I wanted to know Him. One thing I began learning about myself from very early on as well was that I was very analytical. I had a hard time with faith because it required believing in things you couldn't fully understand. You just had to take what others said about God or reality and accept them at face value. Where did my illness come from is another fundamental question I could ask myself because it has played such a big part of my life. Why is it that I occasionally get a God complex and think I am super powerful? Why do I sometimes think I'm the best thing the earth has seen since sliced bread? Personally, I think there is some connection between my early obsession with God and my later identity confusion with God and God-related characters such as the prophets from the Bible like Elijah or even the Antichrist. Maybe my desire for certainty led me back to myself, because at least you think you can understand yourself. Well, in my case, perhaps not. If I were to be honest with myself, there are a great many things I do not understand about myself. Why do normal, creative interests in things like the universe, God, DNA, physics, lead me to thinking I am the Father of Jesus Christ, thinking that I can heal people if I just walk up to them and pray for them, think I can start the rapture by healing people left and right, and everyone would eventually fly up to meet Jesus in the air? How come thinking about the big issues sometimes takes me on a manic journey of sleepless nights and tireless days, while other people can spend much of their waking hours thinking about these big concepts without ever going manic over them? There are some physicists who get paid to think about the big questions of the universe. There are astronomers whose job it is to search into the endless reaches of the universe and discover everything that we can perceive through our senses using finely tuned instruments. There are cosmologists and biologists, geologists and geneticists who think about the big questions and get paid for doing so. They then share what they know with the world, and the world's population eats up their knowledge and it gets shared universally on the World Wide Web. There are theologians who spend all their time and energy digging through Scripture, delving into the mind and character of God, who never lose their boundaries, never confuse themselves for God. Why is it that I have this terrible flaw of losing my boundaries whenever my mind gets wrapped up in something big, whether it is delving into lucid dreams or contemplating the nature of the cosmos? I don't have an answer right now. I'm working towards it. At first, people used to say I got manic because I wasn't taking my meds regularly and I would always stop them after a few sleepless nights. That explanation flew out the window the past 2 episodes, where I was doing exactly what my psychiatrist was telling me to do, taking my medication without missing a dose. Obviously, someone is missing something, and since it's my life, I'm the only one that I can count on to solve my problem. Ultimately, if healing is going to start anywhere, it has to start with me. While I am in manic episodes, I love the feeling of them. I feel connected to the universe. I feel connected to God. I feel connected to others. I feel important, privileged. I feel like all of my life has led up to this very point where I am, that every hardship I have faced for this very moment I am experiencing right now and what I am about to accomplish. I remember during the last episode, I recall that I believed I had found a scientific proof to disprove Darwinian evolution. I felt like Einstein, like I had discovered some new idea. When I looked back on it, however, the math was elementary, and I don't think it took into account all the factors. Of course, Darwinian evolution is a miserable theory, but the problem is a theory, and because of that, it rests upon several unobservable phenomena and cannot be disproven like a math formula or something. It seemed to make sense to me at the time, but I wasn't really disproving Darwin. I was disproving the Big Bang, claiming that something, namely the universe, could never come out of an infinitely dense point. Because points only exist mathematically, they contain no space, no lines, no area. Therefore, they cannot contain matter, energy, anything. I thought I was pretty brilliant, but millions of people and probably thousands of scientists have used the "you can't get everything from nothing" argument against the Big Bang occurring randomly and without any intelligent guidance. The main point I'm getting at is, somehow, by thinking I had discovered some new disproof to the materialist view of the universe, I got excited and stayed up all night writing and thinking. By morning, my thoughts were so random and chaotic and scattered, and most of all grandiose, that I walked into my wife's bedroom in the morning, and I told her that I had a secret I was going to tell her, and she had to promise not to tell anybody. I told her Jesus was my son, and that I was God the Father. I actually wept as I told her this, and my emotions were raw, as I was thinking how hard it was for me to send my own very son to die for the sins of all mankind, and thinking how wonderful the reunion would be, while I, God the Father, waited in Israel for the glorious return of my Son, Jesus Christ, and how amazing the rapture and second coming would be. How do I separate from that? I felt so alive, so powerful, so majestic. It was a false sense of spiritual pride based upon a false spiritual identity. So how do I separate the real Christopher Moyer from the manic Christopher Moyer? Well, when I'm manic, I don't think they are one and the same. I never deny my own identity, not even while manic. Oh, I'm sorry. When I'm manic, I don't. I think they are one and the same. I never deny my own identity, even while manic, because just as I can see how Jesus was both human and divine, I can see how I am both human and divine. Even my name, Christopher, means Christ-bearer, which figures directly into my religious delusions. Now, when I am sane and sober and thinking in my right mind, it is still sometimes difficult to see when my actions spring from manic thoughts, or when they just spring from compassion or being spiritually elevated. Everyone goes through spiritual ups and downs. It just happens that my ups and downs tend to be way higher and way lower than the typical ups and downs that religious people feel. For example, consider the idea of reaching out to another person and sharing the gospel with them. Some churches encourage it. Many books preach it. The Bible even instructs Christian believers to go out and make disciples of all nations, and we would have no missionaries if people were not obedient to this. How then do you know when it is or is not appropriate to share the gospel with someone? This is something I have had struggles with. I suppose the ideal way is to befriend the person first, and once they get to know you well, wait for an opportune time to share your faith without being edgy or imposing on them. You don't want to turn someone off. This, I believe, has been my problem with witnessing. In general, whenever I have tried to witness to someone or share something spiritual with others, I have tended to get so excited and overwhelmed by what I'm sharing that it is too much for the other person, and they tune me out and don't derive any positive benefit out of what I'm trying to accomplish. In fact, it may have even the opposite effect and turn them off to the idea of God I'm trying to share. Some believe it is better to demonstrate Christian love and service with kindness and good deeds rather than with words. Then always leave open the possibility for others approaching you about your faith. You don't want to shove anything down people's throats. When I am manic, I don't think I understand that concept very well. And I think what I have to say is of utmost importance. It demonstrates the type of grandiosity I tend to have when manic. I don't listen to instruction well. I'm not easily guided, and I can definitely throw a temper if I don't get my way. When I have a manic episode, I become like a child. The world appears simple, and people are seen as either threats or friends, either for us or against us. I guess in a way that's kind of how Jesus was too, when he said that if people were not against them, they were for him. They were for him. Sometimes I think my manic thoughts reflect the thoughts of Jesus in his wilder times, like when he cleared the temple and insulted the Pharisees and religious rulers of his day. Sometimes I get a Christ complex when manic and act in similar ways if someone appears to try to stop me from something I'm certain should be done. Like when security people at a mental institution attempt me to stop from breaking out so I can fly to Israel and await my son's return. This happened the last time I was in the hospital. I actually ran as fast as I could and tried to break the door down, which was unsuccessful. Then when a person opened the door from the other side, I bolted out of the door, only to be greeted by a handful of security people jumping on me and grabbing me and pummeling me to the floor, because they didn't want a crazed lunatic running the halls of the hospital. What else could they do? It's not like I was going to hop on a 747 and hitch a ride to Jerusalem like I thought I would do. Or who knows, maybe I would just fly there myself, just me and my supposed wife, Mother Earth, who met me in the hospital and claimed she was my wife for many years and that she was pregnant with my child. There's some crazy stuff that happened. You hear my wife laughing in the background here. As you can see, things can get pretty crazy in the mental ward. It is almost like a dream when I'm in a better frame of mind. I can't believe the crazy things I did, and yet I can still go back to that manic place in my mind, and I understand the whats, the whys, and the hows of my actions, and what their intents and purposes were. So you ask me, how do I separate fact from fancy, mania from reality? Usually my mind just takes care of that on its own. Perhaps the meds help, perhaps not, since my last two episodes both happened while taking the regular prescribed doses of medication. To be honest, I don't know what I need to do to prevent a future episode from happening. I guess one thing could be to never allow myself to think deep thoughts again or ponder the big questions. But I know that's never going to happen. I have too much natural curiosity to stop wondering over the big questions. The cosmological, biological, genetic, spiritual, biblical, theological questions that drive me sometimes to spend nights without sleep. Perhaps the most important sign of impending mania is the lack of sleep and the inability to pull myself away from fascinating material, either on YouTube or a book that I may be reading, or a subject I may be discussing with others or writing about in my own journal. Maybe if I can keep regular sleeping hours of at least 7 to 10 hours a night, I would never go manic. But it's fun to stay up all night watching fascinating videos about the universe, I say in the back of my brain. Yes, it is fascinating, and that is exactly why you need to temper your interest in fascinating things along with other things that need to get done. Preparing a future career, looking for immediate work, keeping my wife happy. One thing that I am working on now that I haven't been so good in the past is keeping in accountability partners. Now I have a friend named Dan Hartman who has agreed to be an accountability partner if I ever claim to be Elijah or God, or have any other ideas that are beyond scriptural or way out there. I hope and pray that if I ever start acting weird based upon some faulty presuppositions I might be holding on to at the time, that Steph can call Dan and have him come and talk me down, use reason to speak to my inner spirit. That way, I might be able to avoid a hospitalization if I ever get manic again. I might even have Adam, the pastor at Veritas, be an accountability partner as well. The more the merrier, and that is all I have for today. So that sums up my fifth letter to Brandy, my therapist at Turning Point. I welcome any comments or likes or dislikes, views. Let me know what you thought of the video, and I hope you have a great day. Subscribe if you like my videos. I have music. I also have thoughts about God, thoughts about life, philosophies, personal philosophies, experiences of being manic. I have a lot of things that I may be sharing in the future as well. So, hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks.